Welcome back to Underrated Movies. I'm your guy. I'm your man, Mr. Alton Henry. Today, I'd like to talk to you of another film I saw last week, and well, it took me. I don't know. I don't know why it took me a week to now talk about it. I don't know. Maybe I had to think about it, or I just now I'm setting the time to bring it to your attention. I saw the recent A24 film. I saw the TV Glow, and yeah, I knew it was PG-13. Starring Justin Smith. Uh, who's this other person here? Uh, Bridget Londi Payne, Danielle Deadwood, Brenda. Yeah, and I realized I recognize that one that actress. She was in she played the mother in Till. She was the lead in Till, which is underrated. But this film, for those who haven't heard about it or are looking to possibly see the film. The film is directed by Jane. I'm not gonna pronounce your name. Okay, she directed the "We're All Going to the World's Fair," and so far with her work, I only seen this is her second, I think, feature. I think so far. I really like this filmmaker's dive into the psyche, where you're literally trying to question your own reality and trying to figure out what's actually happening into your right in front of you. Um, she's done it with this film. She's done it with her previous film, where you literally analyze what the character is trying to comprehend, uh, as in the reality, and you slowly start to see it crumble. The story of this film spans over three periods of time where two teenagers bond over a TV show that supposedly have some sort of supernatural presence and might have some sort of supernatural impact on the two characters. It's advertised as a weird, strange psychological horror film, and it does, I would say, provide some psychological horror imagery, but to its core, this is a psychological drama with small little horror elements. So this is not necessarily like your horror film. It's more about a metaphorical view of trans teens growing up during the 90s, and you see how you kind of see the effects of what it's like to, I guess, grow up in that time frame, because there's a lot of things. It's like an allegory. It's a more of a metaphor of that aspect than what the story offers here. I think they focus more on that than they do with expanding the ideas that are introduced into the story. Because the film, from what I've noticed, is slow introducing these ideas of what the story is all about. They don't really go into but they kind of do a little bit. But I wish they expanded more of the mythology of how this show is supernatural and how it's affecting the two teenagers. Uh, there are some scenes I really do like. I do love the way that well, I wouldn't say love. I do appreciate the way the film tells its story, but I was listening to another reviewer of how the film should have been structured, where it should have been told more in flashbacks instead of playing it throughout. Because I have to be honest, there were some moments where they were building up certain ideas and exploring this concept of this film, and I don't fully believe that the film delivered on that. And I think it focused more on the themes than it did with the story. But sometimes it's not sometimes it may not be a problem, but I thought this concept of this film was so fascinating. I wish they explored more of this world that they were trying to build, and I wish they went more to that route. Because there's an interesting choice, and I appreciate that choice of what takes place into the film because it was more consequential. Where Justin Smith, his character, watches a TV show with this person called the Pink Opaque, and turns out for whatever reason, and they don't fully explain it, and that's fine, not really, of how this show is impacting these teens and bringing in supposedly into that. This is the spoiler alert, so just putting it out there for those who haven't seen it, because I think this is the best way for me to kind of explore this film. Somehow, this television show is morphing these guys into this television show itself. And supposedly, the villain of the show is trying to somewhat hijack one of the bodies of the main characters. And I won't go into detail how that's possible. They don't even explain why. But supposedly, that is the objective of what's happening, where what's happening in the show is somewhat technically happening into the real life. Because there's a moment into the film where the main character, Justin Smith's character, is really narrating the story of what's happening. And then there's a moment into the film, even they show it into the trailer, or they give you impressions of the trailer that his friend disappears into the television show. And somehow she comes back. Just out of the blue, somewhat saying to her, to him, to Justin, that I was in the show trying to survive, but I ran away, but then I'm also got brought back into the show for whatever reason. So there were some moments into the film where things weren't so clear and was a little bit confusing. Especially there were scenes where one of the main characters, was explaining the reason of their disappearance and the connection of what caused her to disappear into the show. It's a fascinating concept, but I got to be honest, at least for me, it didn't fully land. It didn't make a whole lot of sense. But there was an interesting choice I thought that took place into the film where all these ideas were getting introduced. It was getting to the point where we were actually, for at least for me, where we're actually going to see some sort of I think exploration of of this show, and it felt a little realistic of what would happen. Like, why would you want to find out the true horrors of what actually was happening? So one character gets interested somewhat in a fearful way, but then runs away from it, and then you see the consequences of that choice and the horror of what it potentially led to that, which was fascinating because when the movie kind of reaches towards the end, it ended to where it didn't feel like that was the end, but it was more of a consequential kind of horror, and that's what I really admire about this film. But if you're looking for like your, I don't know, A24 doesn't do your typical horror. It's more the horror of the mind. I thought they nailed that part, but it dived more into the theme. I wish it went more into the story concept. This will be a divisive horror film for a lot of people. I do love the '90s nostalgic feel. And actually, that part was I ain't gonna lie, it brought me back watching. My brother showed me some like Goosebumps and some other horror cheesy teen television shows in the 90s and early 2000s, which it man they did a good job replicating that vibe. Like I swear to God, like that was one of the best moments to me. Like they did a good job replicating that feel of the 90s, and I was just I was geeking out on that part. However, I thought the story itself was a bit underwhelming. I wish they explored it more to that fact. But um, I would say give it a try. I do know it's probably one of the more original films to be to come out recently in a while. Um, However, I could tell you straight up, um, it's. I mean, yeah, it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, and I like that it's not. But it's not for everybody. I saw the TV Glow. Have you seen it? Comment below. Let me know what you have, and let me know favorite underrated movie.